Success Stories. I'm Uma Pemaraju. What do you suppose two down-home ice cream makers, a jet-setting lingerie mogul, and a computer genius have in common? Not much, that's for sure, but believe it or not, they do have some similarities. They're all New Englanders who've each had a very unique invention idea, the desire to turn those ideas into reality, and the determination to make their ventures successful. And make no mistake about it, they are successful. And there's one more common thread between them. They're all here tonight to share with you the tales that took them to the top. We've got ice cream that packs a political punch, sexy underwear, and robotic wizardry on the bill. So stay tuned. I'd say it's going to be a pretty unusual hour. How far technology has come, and yet we seem to take for granted how much it has altered our lives. Not too long ago, it might have seemed extravagant to own a personal computer. Today, many people can't get by without one. And who would have thought that we'd see the day when a computerized scanner adds up your grocery bill? And what about automatic bank machines and computerized security systems? It all sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but they are indeed a part of everyday life because a few pioneers of science dared to experiment with concepts that we only dreamed about. Today, the big challenge for computer scientists is artificial intelligence, machines that can perform functions like reading aloud from printed material, music machines that can recreate any sound it hears, machines that type while you dictate. It seems almost unthinkable, but our next success story is about a man who has, in fact, invented machines that think. Ray Kurzweil was born in Queens, New York in 1948. His mother was an artist, his father a noted orchestra conductor, both highly intellectual. So perhaps it came as no surprise that at the age of 5, Ray knew for certain that he would be a scientist. A few years later, when most boys were discovering girls and sports, Ray discovered an infant technology, the computer.
I became interested in computers really around 11 or 12. I built a computer, my first computer at that time, and a little bit later in high school I built a computer that could analyze melodies and develop what I called a pattern recognition model of why melodies of a particular composer sounded good, or what differentiated melodies of a particular composer from another composer. And it could then actually compose melodies in the style of the composer, say Mozart or Chopin, that it had analyzed. And it would sound like a third-rate student of Mozart.
Later in his college years at MIT, he developed and sold a program to a distinguished book publisher for $100,000. Computer science was relatively new to MIT, and when he had taken the 8 computer courses that the school offered, he changed his major to literature. He graduated with a combined bachelor's degree in these 2 areas and decided to direct his attention to solving a specific technological problem that had perturbed him since high school.
My primary area of interest within computers is a field called pattern recognition, which is teaching computers how to recognize patterns like printed letters or speech. If we look at a scene and see a cat on a table, we immediately can tell that that's a cat. That's pattern recognition, and that is actually the most difficult aspect of human intelligence. Very early on in computer science, we were able to teach computers to play chess, solve mathematical theorems, things which adults find hard to do well. Yet today, it's still a challenge to teach a computer how to tell the difference between a cat and a dog, which a small child is able to do. That's been my main area of interest. About half of the human brain, at least, is devoted to this area of pattern recognition, and it has become an increasing area of interest within computers, because we realize that for computers to do useful things, they're going to be able to have to recognize patterns the same way people do. Character recognition, the ability to tell an A from a B, regardless of what typeface it's printed in, has long been a classical problem in pattern recognition. And in 1974, I set up a company, Kurzweil Computer Products, to solve that problem.
Page canceled. Scanner ready for next page.
And solve it he did. Ray invented a computer, the first of its kind that has the ability to scan printed material and read aloud using synthetic speech. For the first time ever, blind people could read without assistance. Al Gazagian has worked for John Hancock Company since 1952 and received a personal reader in his office in January of 1987. He recalls the day it arrived.
Unpacked it and got it going. Matter of fact, I came in the following day, Saturday, to kind of work on it and began using it immediately to read all kinds of documents, memos, manuals, books, reports, tables, you name it. One example is this security booklet, employee security program booklet. We've had it for years. I always thought I really should sit down and read this thing sometime, or at least the sections that pertained to me, but somehow you just never got time to do it, or never got around to doing it. So one of the things I did quite early on with the Kurzweil is, in fact, read that book, or the portions that I cared about, and I learned quite a bit. And it was just so nice to be able to do that sort of thing. I've begun subscribing to certain things that I did not subscribe to before because I knew I'd never get around to reading them. And of course, the idea, now that I'm fortunate enough also to have one of these things at home, which I did because I liked it so much in here, actually taking books out of the public library and reading them, that really is kind of an exciting thing for those of us who haven't been able to do that.
75%. Most recent date of hire, H-I-R-E.
Standing top list.
By a legally qualified physician. There are two types of medical evidence. A signed statement can be provided by a legally qualified physician showing the...
I can remember one time my secretary started reading a questionnaire that I was supposed to complete. It was sort of a medical type thing for the clinic, and we got into some questions that, well, you just didn't want to have a secretary reading to you. And it would have been nice to have the scanner here to do that myself.
Another of Ray's first customers for the voice reader was none other than Stevie Wonder. He was so pleased with the product that he agreed to appear in a television advertisement.
Ever wonder how Stevie Wonder reads his mail?
Dear Stevie, I love your music.
With an amazing machine that can read out loud, it scans printed words and turns them into spoken words.
You're the greatest.
A loan program begun by Xerox and the American Foundation for the Blind will make them available to those who must make their ears do what their eyes cannot.
This is magic.
Ray and Stevie's mutual interest in automation evolved into a friendship. It was during one of their casual conversations that Ray was presented with what could become his next technological challenge.
I had occasion to talk with him around 1982 about music technology, and he was lamenting the fact that there were two different worlds of musical instruments. There were the acoustic world, which are instruments like piano and violin and guitar, which was still the sounds of choice for musicians. But it was very hard to control those instruments. In fact, you couldn't even play them unless you played a variety of instruments. You couldn't play them simultaneously. There was the electronic world where you could play instruments simultaneously. You could modify the sounds. You could sequence them so that you could play a whole orchestra at once. But the sounds you had to work with were very thin, electrical sounding, synthetic sounds. And he said, wouldn't it be great if we could apply these very powerful artistic control methods that electronics provides to the sounds of choice in the acoustic world, piano sounds, violins, and so on. And that really was the challenge of Kurzweil Music Systems.
In 1984, Kurzweil Music Systems began shipping out the Kurzweil 250. Unique in that it could realistically recreate the sounds of hundreds of instruments, from the human voice to the elusive acoustic piano. Mike Brigida, professor of music synthesis at Berklee School of Music.
There's no way in my lifetime that I'll be able to learn how to play flute, clarinet, trumpet, trombone, harp, sing, violin, cello, drums, timpani, all of these instruments. Yes, one can play at them, But to have the dexterity on keyboard and then to be able to make these sounds, to sit down at an instrument like that is just a joy. It's a fun experience, a gratifying experience. I can listen to my own compositions. I don't have to try to put together an ensemble to audition my own compositions. All musicians judge instruments, electronic instruments, and acoustic instruments for that matter, based, number one, on the sound. Because synthesizers had been out for 20 years, everybody knew what a synthesizer sounded like. But for a keyboard player to go up to a keyboard and play a violin or a harp sound or something, some non-keyboard instrument, and have it sound pretty close to the original, that was the sort of the dream.
The Kurzweil 250 received a lot of media attention.
This morning, we could really use the words amazing and awesome for a device called the Kurzweil 250 and for the mind of this man who is Ray Kurzweil, who invented this device.
Did the Kurzweil 250 meet Stevie's needs?
He was thrilled. As soon as we said we had this working model, he came over and won right away, and he did get serial number 0001.
All of the equipment that you see can be programmed by anyone, sighted or blind, to play by itself. That is a technological wonder.
Ray's latest invention solves yet another problem associated with pattern recognition, this time in the form of speech. Speech patterns have always puzzled computer scientists because the patterns created by two people saying the same word often differ significantly.
If you look at two different people saying the word baby, it looks dramatically different. Yet again, there must be some invariant features that makes them the same word and allows us to recognize it as the same word. That's the heart of the problem, trying to find what those invariant features are that's the same between two different utterances of the same word. And we're devoted to what's called large vocabulary speech recognition, which is recognizing speech with a very large vocabulary of 5,000 or 10,000 words. Large enough to create written documents.
In a hospital emergency room, time is precious, often a matter of life and death. Unfortunately, it is the norm for the doctor to spend almost as much time on paperwork as he does on a patient. Ray's newest technology, Voice EM, a voice recognition system, can cut form-filling time virtually in half. From Mercy Hospital in Springfield, Massachusetts, Dr. John Holbrook.
This overcomes the biggest hurdle that has existed in the creation of a paperless hospital, which is the entering of very complex data, which is the data about the patient encounter, generated by the practitioners, by the doctors and the nurses and the nurse practitioners. That data has never been able to be captured before, because people don't have the time and the patience in a busy practice of medicine to type that stuff into computers. The ability to use voice to enter that material into computers makes it rapid and user-friendly. So at the human interface, at the humans using the computer, the voice technology is what really makes the capture of the record possible. After that, everything is easy. Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Demographics. 1, 7, years, white, female, ankle sprain, right, twisting, 1 hour, continue, right, limited range, scratch that, full range. Ace bandage, signature. The ultimate goal is to convert the emergency room to a paperless emergency room. We estimate that perhaps 25% of the cost of delivering health care in a hospital goes to just creating and pushing around pieces of paper. And so we anticipate a huge monumental cost saving if we can ever approach a paperless emergency room.
It's difficult for most of us to apply such terms as common sense and intelligence to a machine. Ray Kurzweil, however, knows the future of computers, and that future is machines that think.
Computers are interesting because today they are affecting just about every discipline. I mean, it's hard to be involved in any profession that isn't being profoundly affected by computers in one way or another. And with what's called the knowledge principle, which is the fact that computers can't do much unless they have knowledge about the world, computer science itself is expanding to envelop most other disciplines.
And for Ray Kurzweil, whose interests range from art to astronomy, there's no place he'd rather be than where he is right now.
If you're involved with computers, you're invariably involved with something else. In our speech recognition business, we're creating systems that create medical reports, so we've had to learn a lot about medicine. In the music company, we're learning a lot about music education and the nature of music and teaching music theory to our instruments so that they in turn can teach music theory to children. So you really get involved in a lot of things other than computers by studying computers. It's a very good vantage point to have a variety of interests in other fields.
In early 1980, Xerox Corporation became interested in Ray's work, and later that year, they purchased his reading machine. Ray, however, remains chairman and chief executive officer of what's called the Kurzweil Reading Machine division of Xerox. Xerox is also a leading investor in Ray's voice recognition company, Kurzweil Applied Intelligence. These days, besides running his 3 businesses, Ray is also working on a first draft of a new book. Not about high technology or machines of the future, as you might think, but a diet book. It seems he wanted to lose some weight, and being the analytical sort, he did some in-depth research on the subject. He's also managed to drop around 40 pounds, so I'd venture to say that he's compiled some dieting information that will be of great value to many people. Now, if he can just invent a machine that blocks your path whenever you head for the late-night snack. We'll be right back. Well, you've just seen it. Our 3 very different guests do indeed possess many of the same ingredients for success. Despite the odds against them, they pursued their dreams, didn't let the fear of failure get in their way, and they proved once again that the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well in America. Thanks for joining me. Good night.
Coming up next on Prime Movie 25, a disastrous chemical spill uncovers government secrets in Warning Sign. Next on Fox 25.